She set the food down on his office floor like she was placing a bomb. Not because she was angry, not yet, because her hands had stopped working, because her brain had stopped translating what her eyes were sending it, because the man she had said yes to, the man who had flown to Atlanta just to ask her mother's permission, the man who had turned her favorite rooftop into the most beautiful night of her life, was sitting in his office chair with another woman draped across him like she belonged there. Renee, his secretary, her hands, his chest, the low lighting he never used when he was actually working late. Maya didn't make a sound. She didn't throw anything. She didn't ask a single question. She just looked at him, really looked, and in that 1 second, every warning she had ever dismissed replayed at full volume. The photograph, his father's cold eyes at dinner, her mother's voice saying, "Baby, if he wants you, he'll know what to do without you having to say a word every single time." She picked up her bag. She walked out and she never looked back. At least that's what she told herself. My queens, welcome to Real Diamond Stories. On today's episode, you get a dose of betrayal, power, romance, love, unexpected encounters, and beautiful beginnings. If this is your first time here, make sure to like, subscribe, click the notification icon to get a reminder when new amazing stories drop, and share this story to friends and family who you think would love to watch it. And also tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I love knowing where my girls are. Now, let's dive back into this amazing story. Maya Bennett did not go looking for complicated. She was 29, running her own event planning firm out of Chicago after building her name in Atlanta, and she had reached the point in her life where she had zero patience for anything that required her to shrink. She had done that before, twice, and both times she had walked away quieter than she arrived, and it had taken her years to find her voice again. So when she showed up at the River North Grand Ballroom on a Thursday evening for a corporate gala setup, and found a wall of suited security blocking her reserved vendor section, she did not smile politely and wait. She walked straight to the person in charge. James Kwon was standing near the window, jacket on, phone in hand, and the kind of presence that made an entire room unconsciously recalibrate. He was tall, controlled, the type of man who never had to raise his voice because the silence around him already said enough. Maya was not impressed, or rather, she refused to be. "Your team is in my section," she said. "No introduction, no softening. I have vendors arriving in 40 minutes, and I need that space cleared now." He looked up from his phone slowly, and then something strange happened. He smiled, not a polite, dismissive smile, a real one, like she had said something that genuinely surprised him. "You're not afraid of me," he said. "I don't know you," she replied. "Move your team." He moved his team, and then he found her an hour later with 2 glasses of sparkling cider because he had noticed she wasn't drinking, and said, "I owe you an apology, and you look like someone who appreciates directness." They talked for 3 hours. He was funny in a way she hadn't expected, dry, observant. He asked questions like he was actually listening to the answers, which was rarer than it should have been. He didn't perform. He didn't try. He just sat with her in the middle of a gala full of important people, like she was the only room worth being in. She drove home that night telling herself it was nothing. He called the next morning. It took 4 months for Maya to let him fully in. For months of him showing up, not dramatically, not with grand gestures every weekend, but consistently. Flowers on a random Tuesday, because she'd mentioned liking them once. A reservation at a place she'd said she wanted to try 6 weeks earlier. A phone call at 11 p.m. when she'd had a bad client day, not to fix it, just to listen. She introduced him to her mother, Nia, on a Sunday in April. Nia Carter was not a woman who softened quickly. She had watched her daughter love the wrong men with the right energy too many times, and she had made herself a promise that the next man who walked through her door would have to earn every inch of her approval, saying he brought her favorite flowers. He had asked Maya's cousin. He sat at Nia's kitchen table and answered every uncomfortable question without flinching. And when Nia said, "My daughter has a pattern of choosing men who make her feel like she's asking for too much," he didn't get defensive. He said, "Then I want to be the first one who makes her feel like she's not asking for enough." Nia didn't say much after that, but Maya caught her mother watching him from the hallway when he helped clear the dishes without being asked, and that was the moment she knew. What Maya didn't know was that Daniel had gone back to that kitchen without her. 3 months later, a Sunday morning, just him and Nia sitting across from each other with coffee going cold between them, planning the most important night of Maya's life. He told Nia everything he wanted to do. The restaurant, the rooftop, the exact words he planned to say. He asked her what Maya would need to feel safe, saying, yes, not just happy, but safe. Nia had looked at him for a long moment and said she needs to know you're choosing her, not tolerating what comes with her choosing it. I know, he said. That's why I'm here. The engagement dinner was perfect. Private. The rooftop of Maya's favorite river North restaurant wrapped in white lights. Her closest people gathered without warning, Daniel on one knee before she even understood what was happening. She said yes before he finished the sentence. But in this is the open loop that would quietly unravel everything. Someone else was watching that night, someone who had been watching for much longer than Maya realized, and he was not celebrating. James Kwon did not attend the engagement dinner. He sent a gift, expensive, impersonal. The kind of gift a man sends when he wants to signal that he acknowledges something without endorsing it. Maya had held the box, read the card twice, and quietly set it aside. She didn't say anything to Daniel about the feeling it left in her chest. She didn't want to be the woman who manufactured problems in the middle of her own happiness. That was her first mistake. James was old money and older pride. He had built the Kwon name across 2 continents, and he had very specific ideas about what that name deserved. A daughter-in-law who understood the culture, who spoke the language, who would raise his grandchildren inside a world he recognized. He had tolerated his son's relationship for months with the patient certainty that it would dissolve on its own. When it didn't, when Daniel came to him with a ring receipt and a decision already made. James didn't argue. He smiled, said very little, and started making phone calls. The first move was subtle, elegant, even. A celebration dinner for the Kwon business partners, black tie, held at a private venue in the Gold Coast. Daniel was expected to attend. It was business, non-negotiable, and James made sure that the seating arrangement placed his son directly beside a woman named Sophie Yoon. Beautiful, educated, Korean. The kind of woman James had been quietly shortlisting for 2 years. The photographer at that dinner was not accidental. The image that circulated the following morning showed Daniel at the head of the table, laughing, leaning slightly toward Sophie. Both of them caught in a moment that looked far more familiar than one dinner between strangers should have looked. It spread through Chicago's social circles the way those images always do, fast, cropped, and stripped of every piece of context that would have made it harmless. Maya saw it on a Tuesday morning over her first cup of coffee. She stared at it for a long time, and then she put her phone down and went back to her morning, because she knew her man. She knew the rooms he moved through. She knew that his world was full of events and photographs and people who looked significant in a frame and meant nothing in real life. She was not about to become the woman who called her fiancé, panicking over a dinner photo when she had his last name being planned on wedding stationery. She trusted him, so she said nothing. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that her silence was being monitored. James had expected a reaction, a confrontation, a crack he could wedge open and widen. When Maya responded to the photograph with complete stillness, he didn't read it as confidence. He read it as a provocation, and it made him angrier than an argument would have. So he went further. Renee Walsh had worked for Daniel for 3 years. She was organized, discreet, and deeply professional. The kind of assistant who anticipated problems before they arrived and solved them before they were named. Daniel trusted her with his calendar, his private meetings, his most sensitive business communications. He had never once looked at her as anything other than indispensable. Renee, on her end, had spent 3 years being professional about something that was not entirely professional on the inside. She had never acted on it. Never said a word. She understood the boundary and she respected it, or she had, until the evening Chairman James Kwon's private number appeared on her phone. She almost didn't answer. She should not have answered. He was warm, measured. He told her she was one of the most capable women his son had ever worked with. He told her that the woman Daniel was engaged to didn't understand his world, didn't understand what his son needed, and that a woman of Renee's intelligence surely understood that some relationships were beautiful mistakes. He didn't ask her to do anything explicit. He painted a picture. He let her fill in the rest. And Renee, lonely, overlooked, 3 years of quiet feelings sitting in her chest, filled it in. The night it happened was supposed to be their night. Daniel had told Maya he was working late. She had accepted it, the way she always did, because she was not the type to suffocate a man she trusted. But something had been sitting wrong in her chest all week. Nothing she could name. Just a low hum of something she kept telling herself was anxiety, not instinct. At 9 p.m., she packed up his favorite order from the Thai place on Michigan Avenue, the one he'd introduced her to on their 4th date, and drove to his office building. She wasn't checking on him. She just wanted to see him, to sit across from him for 20 minutes and feel normal again. The building's security knew her face. She took the elevator to the 32nd floor. The lights in the main office were low, lower than they should have been for someone working. His door was slightly open. She pushed it gently and... She stopped. Renee was sitting across his lap. His hand was at her waist. The room was quiet and close and arranged in a way that answered every question before Maya could form one. Neither of them heard the door open. Maya didn't say his name. She didn't ask what was happening because the answer was sitting right there in front of her, lit up by the wrong kind of lighting, in a room that had clearly been arranged for something other than work. She set the takeout bag down by the door, slow and steady, the way you move when your whole body has gone quiet in protest. Then she turned around and walked back to the elevator without a single word. The doors closed. That was when the shaking started. She didn't fall apart in the lobby. She didn't fall apart in the parking garage either, not at first. She got into her car, gripped the wheel with both hands, and sat there breathing like she was trying to remember how. Every piece of evidence she had quietly waved off over the past several weeks came rushing back at once. The photograph from the Kwon dinner. The woman named Sophie standing close enough to make strangers talk. Her mother's voice, calm and certain, the one that had warned her months ago that a man who truly wants you never leaves room for guessing. She drove straight to her mother's house. Nia opened the door before Maya even knocked, like she'd felt it coming. She didn't ask a single question. She just pulled her daughter inside and held on. They sat together for a long time without speaking. When Maya finally found the words, she told her mother everything, start to finish, and Nia listened the way she always did, steady, present, never once interrupting. That man sat at my table, Nia finally said, quiet almost to herself. He looked me dead in my eyes. I know, Mama, and you didn't say anything. When you saw them, no. Nia exhaled slowly. Good, she said, because whatever came out of your mouth in that moment wasn't going to be enough for what you were feeling anyway. Maya pulled her knees up to her chest. I keep thinking about that photo, the one with the other woman at his father's dinner. I let it go so fast. You trusted him, Nia said. That's not weakness, baby. That's just who you are. Maybe I shouldn't be that anymore. Nia studied her daughter for a long moment, and Maya could see the conflict sitting behind her mother's eyes, because Nia had genuinely liked Daniel, more than she'd liked anyone Maya had ever brought home. Which made all of this so much harder to sit with. I don't know exactly what happened in that office, Nia said carefully. And I'm not going to pretend I do. But here's what I know for certain. A man who is exactly where he's supposed to be doesn't leave you standing in a doorway questioning it. Not ever. Maya nodded slowly, wiped her face, and straightened her spine. I'm not calling him, she said. No, Nia agreed. You're not. Daniel called 11 times that night. Texted 4 times after that. The final message landed at 2 in the morning, 3 words long. Please, let me explain. Maya read it once, turned her phone face down, and fell asleep in her mother's guest room for the first time in 2 years. He showed up at Nia's door the next morning. Nia answered it herself. What happened in that doorway lasted less than 3 minutes. She didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. She told him plainly that her daughter needed space, that he would not be getting it from her, and that if he was even half the man he claimed to be, he would respect that and leave. He stood there with his jaw tight and his eyes red from a night with no sleep, nodded once and walked away. Maya watched the whole thing from the upstairs window. She didn't go down. Renee called 3 days later, from a number Maya didn't have saved but recognized instantly. She almost let it ring out. She answered anyway. Renee's voice came through soft, rehearsed soft, the kind that's been practiced in a mirror. She said she was sorry. She said she hadn't known about the engagement, which Maya's whole body rejected as a lie before the sentence even finished. She said she'd misread the signals, that her boss had been giving off something she'd misunderstood, that in the moment she genuinely believed there was something real between them. Every word landed like a second cut, not just because of what was being said, but what it implied underneath. That there had been room for Renee to misread anything at all. That Daniel had let that kind of confusion exist in the first place. Maya hung up without answering back. That afternoon, she took the ring off her finger, placed it back in its velvet box, and had it couriered to his office with no note attached. Clean. Done. The way she closed every door she meant to keep closed. My queens, before we go further, I want to know what you think. Would you have walked out the way Maya did? no questions asked? Or would you have demanded answers on the spot? Tell me in the comments, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button on Real Diamond Stories so you never miss the next one. Now let's get back into it, because this story still has a long way to go. What Maya didn't know was that the office had not been an accident on Daniel's end either, not in the way she assumed. James had spent weeks circling closer, and that particular night, his timing had been deliberate down to the minute. A call placed to building security, a quiet word to make sure the lights stayed low and the door stayed unlocked. He hadn't needed Daniel to do anything wrong. He only needed Maya to walk in and see something that looked wrong enough. Renee hadn't known any of that when it started. She only knew that for 3 years she had built a private and complicated tenderness for a man who barely seemed to notice she existed outside of his calendar, and that on one particular evening, a voice on the phone, warm and patient and entirely unbothered by what it was asking of her, had given her a version of permission she'd never let herself reach for on her own. James told her she understood Daniel's world in ways his fiancé never would. He never once told her to act on it. He simply made the idea feel inevitable, and Renee, lonely in ways she hadn't admitted even to herself, let it become exactly that. What Renee hadn't expected was what came after. Daniel hadn't reached for her once Maya was gone. He'd stood up so fast his chair rolled back into the wall, his face draining of every bit of color, and he'd said Maya's name into the empty hallway like it might bring her back if he said it enough times. He didn't look at Renee again that night. He barely looked at anyone for weeks. Renee watched him grieve in that careful, invisible way men like him grieved, showing up early, leaving late, never raising his voice, never explaining himself to a single person in that building. And something about witnessing it up close cracked open the guilt she'd been holding at arm's length since that night. She came to his office one evening after the floor had emptied out. "I think I should resign," she told him. "What I did wasn't fair to you, and it definitely wasn't fair to her, and I'm sorry." He looked up slowly. "Why did you do it?" She held his gaze as long as she could manage. "Because I've cared about you for 3 years, and I let that turn into a decision I had no right to make." The office went quiet. "I know," he said finally, which wasn't the answer she'd braced for. "I've known for a while, Renee. I should have said something instead of pretending I hadn't noticed. That part is on me, so I'll go," she said again. "No," he said. "Stay. We'll figure out what this looks like going forward. Strictly professional. She should have left anyway." She didn't. Maya, meanwhile, went back to Atlanta for 3 weeks to put herself back together, old friends, her college roommate's guest room, long nights on the balcony with cheap wine and honest conversation that asked nothing of her. She downloaded a dating app, deleted it, downloaded it again, and matched with a man named Marcus who was easy and funny and entirely incapable of making her feel anything she hadn't deliberately built herself. She kept seeing him anyway, because easy was exactly what she'd asked for. Marcus was kind and present in the simplest possible way, and some nights she almost believed that was enough. But Daniel had never been simple, and the part of her that had loved him fully, specifically, the way you only love someone who has actually seen you and chosen you anyway, hadn't gotten the message that it was supposed to move on. She never told Marcus about him. She kept that chapter sealed shut and called the weight she still carried healing, told herself it was just time doing its work. She came back to Chicago that fall. 3 weeks later, on a Friday evening at a gallery opening in the West Loop, a client's invitation in hand, she walked through the glass doors and stopped cold. Daniel was standing 20 feet away. Renee beside him. Not touching, not dramatically close, but together in that quiet, familiar way that says two people now share the same private world. He saw her in the same instant she saw him, and everything she'd packed away so carefully came rushing back hard enough to nearly take her off balance. She didn't run. Maya Bennett had never been a woman who ran. She straightened her shoulders, fixed her clutch, and greeted her client with a smile that cost her everything she had left in that moment. She laughed in the right places. She said the right things about the right pieces on the wall. She was warm and sharp and completely present, and the entire time she could feel him watching her. Not with guilt exactly, something stranger than guilt, the specific attention of a man who has spent months memorizing someone's absence and is now standing in a room with the real thing. She made it 40 minutes before he found her, moving the way he always moved. Like the room simply rearranged itself around him. "Maya," he said. Just her name, low, careful, like something he'd been holding in his mouth for a long time. "Daniel," she said back, just as measured. "You look well," he said. "I am well." Silence sat between them, saying everything the words were too careful to admit. "I need 5 minutes," he said. "That's all I'm asking for. 5 minutes to say what I should have found a way to say months ago." Every rebuilt piece of her said no. She followed him to the quiet corner near the back of the gallery anyway, because the version of her that had said yes on a rooftop wrapped in white lights was still in there somewhere, and it wanted to hear what he had to say. So he told her everything. His father's calls, the arranged seating at that dinner, the photograph that had never been an accident, the way James had read her silence as weakness instead of trust and decided to push harder because of it. He told her about a conversation James had eventually admitted to, cold and unapologetic, confirming he'd approached Renee directly and given her exactly the kind of permission a person needs to do something they already wanted to do. Maya stood very still through all of it. "Your father paid my own secretary to climb into your lap," she said slowly when he finished. "He didn't pay her," Daniel said. "He manipulated her. There's a difference, even if that difference means nothing to you right now." "It means something," she admitted quietly. "It doesn't fix anything, but it means something." He looked at her with an expression she recognized, the one that only showed up when he'd run completely out of armor. "I should have protected you better. From him. From all of it. I knew exactly who my father was, and I let myself believe love would be enough to hold his interference back. That was naive, and it cost us everything, and I'll carry that for the rest of my life." She looked away at the art at nothing. "There's something else," she said. It wasn't a question. He went quiet a second too long, and that second told her everything before he opened his mouth. "Renee is pregnant." The gallery kept moving around them, glasses clinking, soft music, someone laughing nearby about something that had nothing to do with either of them. Maya nodded once, the way your body moves when it needs to do something while your mind is still catching up. "Is it yours?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "It's mine." She walked out alone, not dramatically. She said her goodbyes to her client, collected her coat, and stepped out into the cool Chicago night, just standing there, breathing, while the city moved around her, cabs and voices and a train somewhere in the distance. What she felt wasn't rage anymore. It was past rage, the particular kind of tired that comes from being strong for so long that even your grief learns to stay quiet. She called her mother from the car. "He told me everything," she said. "His father, Renee," all of it. Nia went quiet for a moment. "Renee is pregnant, Mama," a longer silence this time. "Oh, baby, I'm okay," Maya said, and strangely enough, underneath the ache and the exhaustion and the grief reshaping itself into something more complicated, some part of her actually was. "I just needed to hear your voice," she said. "Come home," Nia said simply. "I'm already driving." What happened after that wasn't anything Maya had planned for. Daniel called her 2 days later, and she answered, which surprised even her. He asked if they could talk again, not about getting back together, not about undoing anything that had already happened, just talk. She told him she needed time. She took a week. By the end of that week, something in her had shifted, not toward him and not away from him either, but deeper into herself, back toward the version of Maya who had existed before she ever learned to fold herself smaller around men who couldn't hold her at full size. And the strange, uncomfortable truth she kept circling back to was that Daniel had never once asked her to be smaller. Even now, even buried under everything his father had engineered and everything that had grown out of the wreckage, he had never made her feel like too much. They met for coffee on a Saturday morning, a small place in Lincoln Park, no security, no audience, just two people and the whole truth sitting on the table between them. "I'm not coming back," she said first. Clear, gentle, final. "I need you to hear that before anything else," he nodded. "I know. But I also need you to know I don't think you're the man I believed you were that night," she said. "I think you're something more complicated than that. And I think your father used both of us to get what he wanted." "He did," Daniel said. "And I've ended every professional tie I had to him because of it. Completely. Whatever he built with my name attached to it, I'm walking away from all of it. Because of me. Because of who I still want to be," he said. "You reminded me that person was still in there." She looked down at her coffee, at her own hands, at the bare space on her finger where a ring used to sit. "Take care of that baby," she said quietly. "Whatever happened between you and Renee, that child didn't choose any of it. Do right by it." He looked at her like she'd said something that hurt and healed him at the exact same time. "You are the most remarkable woman I have ever known," he said. "I know," she said, and for the first time in months, she smiled, small, private, entirely her own. She stood, buttoned her coat. Goodbye, Daniel, he didn't try to stop her. And that restraint, that final choice to put her peace ahead of his own need, was the thing she carried with her out into the cold Saturday morning air, feeling for the first time like herself again. Completely. Fully herself. Before we close this one out, my queens, drop a comment and tell me, do you think Maya made the right call walking away for good, or should she have given Daniel a real second chance? I read every single one of your comments, so don't be shy. And if this story had you holding your breath even once, do me a favor and hit subscribe on Real Diamond Stories, turn on that notification bell, and share it with someone who needs a good cry tonight. We've got a brand new story dropping soon, and you do not want to miss it. Some love stories end at the altar. Some end in silence in a parking garage with shaking hands wrapped around a steering wheel. And some end over coffee on an ordinary Saturday, not in anger, not in tears, but in the rare kind of understanding that only shows up once two people finally stop performing for each other and start telling the truth. Maya Bennett did not lose. She grieved. She broke. She rebuilt herself from the ground up, and she walked away from all of it with every piece of who she was still fully intact. That is not a small thing. That is everything. And as for Daniel, a man who had everything except the courage to protect what mattered most before it was already gone. The real question was never whether he loved her. It's whether love without protection, without courage, without the willingness to stand in front of your own father and say, this woman is my choice, and that is final, whether love like that was ever going to be enough in the first place. Thank you for spending this time with me, my queens. If you loved this story, make sure you're subscribed to Real Diamond Stories so you catch every new release the moment it drops. See you in the next one.